Welcome back, everyone. Today we'll be taking a deep dive into From Tea to Coffee, the memoir of Cheng Wang.
Oh, this is a good one.
It is. It is. It's a fascinating look at modern Chinese history, really through a very personal lens, starting with the Cultural Revolution.
Right, right. The Cultural Revolution, such a tumultuous period. And Cheng's story really captures how those big political upheavals impacted everyday people in often surprising ways.
Yeah, absolutely. The book kind of drops us right into 1970. Cheng, he's this young idealistic guy, volunteers to be re-educated in the countryside.
Re-educated. It sounds so benign, doesn't it?
Well, I think that was maybe the point. But yeah, he ends up in this remote village, Pianji. Ironically, it means heavenly happiness.
Heavenly happiness. Oh, the irony.
Right. And it's a complete 180 from his urban upbringing, like total culture shock.
I bet. You know, he goes in expecting this politically charged, almost romantic vision of revolutionary fervor.
Yeah, he's ready to contribute to the cause.
Yeah.
But Tianji's, well, it's not that at all.
Nope. Quiet, rural, pretty much untouched by the ideological fervor that's gripping the rest of the country.
I mean, he gets there, right.
Yeah.
And the village office, their heavenly happiness headquarters.
Hmm.
A mud hut, basically.
Oh, wow.
Chickens and ducks everywhere.
Yeah.
Life just moves at a different pace. Not the organized, politically driven world he was used to.
Not at all. And remember, this was a deliberate policy at the time. Sending educated youth to the countryside, the idea was to reconnect with the people.
Bridge the gap between the elites and the peasants, right?
Exactly. But as Cheng quickly learns, reality was a lot more complicated than that.
It makes you think about the lasting impact, right? A whole generation uprooted, education disrupted. Did it actually achieve its goals? Or did it create a whole new set of problems?
That's the big question, isn't it? And Cheng's story kind of becomes this microcosm of that larger question.
It is. Okay, so as Cheng's trying to adjust to life in Tianxi, we meet all these really interesting characters who totally challenge his city slicker ideas about rural life.
Right, right. His host family, Aunt Lu and Uncle Lu, they're just the embodiment of warmth and resilience.
Yeah, they take him in, show him the ropes. Proof that even in the middle of all this craziness, human connection still exists.
And it's not just their kindness, though, right? It's that they represent this whole way of life, living close to the land, community ties, so different from where Cheng comes from.
Absolutely. Then there's Uncle Zhao, this wise old peasant who kind of becomes Cheng's mentor out there.
Oh, I love Uncle Zhao. He's got this whole philosophy on life, all about human connection, patience, understanding, very rooted in Confucian values.
Which were kind of being actively challenged by the Cultural Revolution, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It was this clash between traditional values, that Confucian harmony, respect for elders, and then the whole Maoist ideology.
Radical change, class struggle.
Yeah.
Two completely opposite forces.
Exactly. So the question is, how do you reconcile those two? How do individuals navigate that? And Cheng's experience in Tianji really shows us that struggle up close.
It really does. It's almost like watching two different worlds collide.
Exactly. And then in the middle of it all, you've got people like Uncle Zhao. The resilience of those traditional values quietly being passed on to the next generation.
That story about Uncle Zhao traveling for months by donkey cart just to build relationships really stuck with me. Exchanging gifts, bricks of tea, sheepskin. It was all about those personal connections.
Such a different world, right? Like building relationships over time, face to face, not through, instant messages or whatever.
It's like we've traded that in for speed and efficiency, and we may have lost something crucial along the way.
It does make you think.
It does. Okay, so another thing that struck me was how important Baiji, that strong liquor, was in Tianji.
Ah, Baiji. More than just a drink.
Right. It's like it's social currency, hospitality, trust building. It's all tied up in sharing a drink.
Refusing a shot of Baiji, big sign of disrespect.
Cheng learns that the hard way. Right. He's not used to the taste. But over time, he comes to understand what it really means. It's not about getting drunk. It's about participating in this ritual.
It's about respecting different ways of life, even if they're unfamiliar. It's about those deeper layers of cultural significance.
And as Cheng immerses himself in all of this, he starts to question his own assumptions about rural communities, about China itself.
He discovers a depth of human connection there, a resilience, a wisdom that, it challenges his whole urban intellectual worldview.
Classic fish out of water story, isn't it?
Totally. Cheng's biases, his preconceived notions, he has to confront them. And in doing so, he learns a lot about himself and the world.
It's a good reminder that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the most unexpected places.
Absolutely. And as Cheng's really settling into this life in Tianjia, something happens, a huge turning point, not just for him, but for like millions of young people in China.
Yeah, 1977, the Gaokao, the college entrance exams, they come back.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's more than just like resuming school, right?
Way more. Think about it. The Cultural Revolution had totally upended education. Universities shut down, intellectuals persecuted, a whole generation basically denied a future.
So bringing back the Gaokao, it was a sign, right? Like China's turning a corner, trying to rebuild.
Exactly, a step towards a more open, more intellectually vibrant society. For Cheng, it was huge, a real chance to, escape the uncertainty of his life, create a future for himself.
But it wasn't easy, was it?
No, not at all. For Cheng, for everyone who took it, it was a massive challenge. Years of disrupted education, limited resources, and, crazy competition.
Imagine that pressure, right? You've been working the fields, your education's been on hold, and suddenly this one exam determines your whole future.
It's incredible that Cheng even considered it. Talk about resilience.
And we see him struggling, studying by candlelight in Tianqi, trying to catch up while outside the whole world is changing.
It's poignant, right? Even in all that upheaval, those individual aspirations, the thirst for knowledge, it persists.
You know what really got me? His passion for English. He falls in love with the language, but there are no resources, no teachers. It's a reminder that for a lot of people, even today, access to education is still this huge barrier.
It raises the question of equity, doesn't it? Even with the Gaokao back, not everyone had an equal shot. Urban kids, kids with more resources, they had a clear advantage.
So Cheng's story kind of highlights how important it is to create systems that level the playing field.
Yeah, give everyone a fair chance. Okay, so Cheng's pursuing this dream of going to university, and his journey takes him from rural Tianjin to Shenyang, this industrial powerhouse of a city.
Big change.
Huge. We go from the quiet rhythms of village life to the noise and grime of factories. Cheng gets a job at the electric fan factory, total opposite of the intellectual life he craves.
And it shows how even as China's opening up, reforming its economy, that legacy of the communist past, the control, the conformity, it's still there.
This tension, right. Old ways versus new. Glimmers of hope, but they're constrained by the past.
Trying to like grow a flower in a concrete jungle, maybe.
That's a good one. But even in this tough environment, Cheng keeps learning. He keeps dreaming of a future where he can use his knowledge to actually make a difference.
And then, totally out of the blue, that dream takes him across the world to America.
Land of opportunity. A real leap of faith.
He's leaving everything he knows, stepping into the unknown. And it's not just about the place, it's a cultural awakening, an intellectual one.
He's got to learn a new language, new customs. He's trying to understand this society that operates so differently from the one he left behind.
And it's a huge adjustment, right? He's gone from a society where everything's planned and controlled to America, where individual freedom is everything.
Can you imagine that shift? Exhilarating and probably terrifying at the same time.
Those early stories, his first car, a $300 Ford Granada, he doesn't even know how to drive stick.
And he just figures it out, right?
Embracing the American DIY spirit. It's those little moments of human kindness that can make all the difference when you're in a strange place. And then there's his job interview at the Taiwanese restaurant.
Yeah.
That owner, wow, strong opinions on hard work and the American dream.
It's that classic immigrant experience, finding your way, figuring out how things work. But it also shows that entrepreneurial spirit, You got to hustle, you got to be resourceful when you're starting from scratch in a new country.
So Cheng's settling in, right? But he's also wrestling with these big philosophical questions. He's seeing firsthand the differences between capitalism and communism. And it makes him question everything, like what does progress really mean? What works, what doesn't?
The book goes deeper here. He's not just telling his story anymore. He's analyzing, comparing, he's trying to understand the forces that shape societies, economies, everything.
He dives into Western economic theory, Adam Smith, Milton Friedman, and he's impressed by America's innovation, its productivity, but he also sees the downsides, the inequality, the focus on profit above all else.
It's the age-old question, right? How do you balance prosperity with fairness? No easy answers.
And Cheng doesn't pretend to have them. He's just sharing his struggle, his process. It's about encouraging people to think critically, not just accepting what they're told.
Exactly. And while he's doing all this, he's changing too, personally. He's not just observing America anymore. He's internalizing its values.
building relationships, finding a community, really creating a sense of belonging.
He talks about the kindness of strangers, the friendships, the intellectual energy. It's that reminder that cultural exchange isn't just about ideas, it's about those human connections.
And even as he's building a life in America, he's keeping tabs on China. The reforms are moving ahead, but the political situation is still shaky. And he feels this pull, this tension between the life he's making for himself and his homeland.
So many immigrants feel that, right? That desire to be part of two worlds, to honor your heritage while embracing your new home. So Cheng is caught between these two worlds, right? The life he's building in America and the pull of China, this country that's changing so fast.
Yeah, and just as he's trying to figure all that out, he gets this unexpected offer from an old colleague, Wang Zong. Remember him?
Zhang Zong, his old senior VP at CEIEC, the guy who sent Cheng to America in the first place.
That's the one. So what does he want?
Well, Zhang Zong's been in New York running CEIEC's North American operations, and he's been watching Cheng, impressed by, how he understands both Western business and Chinese culture.
Makes sense. So Zhang Zong's about to head back to Beijing, take a big leadership role at the company?
Exactly. And he sees Cheng as someone who can really help modernize CEIEC, make it more competitive. So he offers Cheng a job in Beijing.
Wow, talk about a turnaround. From struggling student to, executive material, that must have been tempting.
Oh, yeah. Huge decision for Cheng. He's got a life in America. He's working on his dissertation at Berkeley. His wife, Pei Wen's got her own career going.
But then there's this chance to, help shape China's future, be part of this economic boom.
It was a real dilemma. Values, ambition, what does home even mean? All these questions come up.
So what did he do?
He takes the job, goes back to Beijing with Zhang Zong, ready to dive in head first. It's a decision driven by, I think, a sense of duty, wanting to be part of something bigger than himself.
So he finds himself back in China, but it's the late 80s now, and the energy there, it's totally different, isn't it?
Oh, night and day. Economic reforms are in full swing. There's this optimism, like anything's possible, and Cheng's right in the middle of it.
Working with Zhang Zong to shake things up at CEIEC.
Exactly. They're pushing for innovation, streamlining, really challenging the old ways.
But that kind of change, it's never easy, right? Especially in a big traditional company.
Oh, they hit resistance. Big time. People who are comfortable with the status quo, suspicious of Western ideas, threatened by change.
How did Cheng handle that?
This is where his ability to bridge those cultural divides, it becomes crucial. He's patient, he listens, he finds common ground, he wins people over, little by little.
It's amazing, right? That journey, starting with being sent to Tianqi, it gave him the skills, the resilience to navigate all this. Tianqi was training for this, in a way.
It's a good point. Those experiences, meeting people like Uncle Zhao, immersing himself in a different way of life, it all shaped him, even if he didn't realize it at the time.
But just as he's making progress at CEEC, something huge happens. 1989, the Tiananmen Square protests.
Oh, yeah. Turning point in the book and in Cheng's life. He's right there, seeing those hopes for democracy clash with the government's crackdown.
It must have been a shock, especially after spending years in America. How did he deal with it?
It messed with him, honestly. He wants to believe in China's future, but he's also seeing the limits of freedom in a one-party state. He's struggling with, his role in this system that he's not sure he believes in anymore.
That's a tough spot, isn't it? How do you make a difference when you might have to compromise your values? It's something a lot of people face working in or even just with authoritarian countries.
No easy answers. And Cheng doesn't try to give them. He's just sharing his struggle.
So what happened? What did he do?
He leaves China, goes back to America. It's a tough choice, but he feels like it's the right one for him. He realizes the political climate's just too restrictive. He can't really contribute there anymore.
So this time, he's not a student, right? He's coming back with all this experience, this deeper understanding of how the world works.
Right. He's not just learning from the West anymore. He's integrating those ideas with his own experiences, his Chinese heritage. He becomes this bridge between the two.
He dives into a new career, tech this time, and he keeps building those bridges, using what he's learned to help people understand each other.
He talks a lot about cultural integration, finding ways to celebrate diversity while still being true to yourself. He challenges those immigrant communities that kind of stay closed off, encourages them to engage with the wider world.
It's like he's come full circle. He started by being forced out of his comfort zone in Tianqi. Now he's using that to help others adapt, find their own sense of belonging.
It shows how powerful those challenging experiences can be. what seems like a setback can turn into your greatest teacher, right?
As Cheng looks back on it all, from Tianjin to Beijing to Silicon Valley, he has this realization about what home really means.
It's not just a place, right? It's about belonging, connection, finding your purpose. Doesn't matter where you are in the world.
It's a powerful message,
Yeah.
especially now when the world's so interconnected. Home can be fluid, something we create through our relationships, experiences, our values.
Cheng's story is inspiring, especially for anyone who's ever felt like an outsider. It reminds us that our differences are what make us strong, that change can lead to growth, and that building bridges between cultures, it makes life richer, more meaningful.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into From Tea to Coffee, think about this. How can Cheng's journey inspire you to embrace change, challenge your own assumptions, and build bridges in your own life?
Hmm.
What does home mean to you? How do you create that sense of belonging? Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.